All right, so our photo album server is really pretty simple thus far. Like it only returns a list of the albums in it, just the names of the folders in our album subfolder. And it doesn't even really care what URL we're calling it with. For example, I can do albums 2012 like this. I can say wingly wongly like that. It doesn't matter. It's just always returning the same URL information. It would be nice if I could actually start to add some APIs to my Node.js server. And in particular, what we'd like to do is we'd like to respond to albums JSON to get all the albums, or it would be neat to say like album name.json. For example, like if I wanted to get the contents of Italy 2012, I could do that. I've actually elected to put .json at the end of every API name just to sort of make it clear to people that who are calling it that this is actually just a JSON server returning JSON content only. So we can totally do this, but we have to make some modifications to our server now, so let's go ahead and do that. So to support the albums, what we'll say is if rec.url equals /albums.json, that's really quite simple. We're going to call a function called handle load albums rec response. And what we'll do is we'll extract this function out into the handle load albums like that. And actually that'll work exactly as it did before. So now we should be able to test this out. And let's do node simple. And we should be able to say albums.json, and that works. Great. Okay, so now we would also like to support the /album name. So what we're going to do is we're going to say if rec.url.subster07 equals /albums, rec.url.subster rec.url.length minus 5 equals .json. What I'm doing is I'm basically saying, does the string start with /albums and end with /JSON? And if it does, I'm going to say handle get album rec res, like that. So I'm actually going to cheat, and then I'm actually going to, let's actually quickly finish things off. I can actually say res.write head 404 content type application JSON. I don't actually need to pass JSON back with this, but let's just be consistent. Res.end JSON.stringify error unknown resource, like that. So even if they give us something that we don't know about, we'll be fine. Okay, so let's write this handle get album function now. We're actually going to cheat, and we're going to use the load albums function that we have from before, and I'll put it down here, and we'll call it handle get album. So the very first thing we need to do in the handle get album function is we need to say var album name. And the way we'll get that is, again, we'll get it off the request.url, and we'll use the subster function to extract it from there, and we'll take 7, and then we'll take the rec.url.length minus 12, which is the combined length of albums and .json. So now we have the album name. We're actually going to write a new function called load album, which will take the album name, because that's the one we want to load, and it'll return a list of the photos in that album. And we can reuse this, a lot of this code here. The error case will be the same. The first thing will be the same. And then for the final response data, we'll say album. We'll actually first return the album name as album name. And then we'll also return the photos, which are given back to us here in this callback. And then finally 1, 2, 3. And then let's be nice and polite and return the /n like that. And let's make sure I did that. I'll bounce that out. All right, so now all we need to do is we need to write this load album function. We're lucky and that we can cheat, and we can actually just use most of the code here from the load album list function. So let's go down here. We'll paste it. The key difference to the signature is I need the album name. I actually still can use the readDir function because the album itself is just a folder, but what I'm going to do now is add in the album name, and then I'll get the contents of that folder. Then I'm going to replace all the dirs only with files only because I only want the files in this thing. So I'm going to iterate over all of the contents, and I'm going to look through them all and see which ones are files. So I need to here again go album name plus slash like that. Oopsie, let's get the quotes right. And then I'm going to say is file. And if it's a file, and only if it's a file, then I'll push it onto the list. Then I'll return it back to the calling function. So I have my handle get album, which is new. And then I will extract the name of the album. I'll call the load album function, and it will basically work like the load album list, but instead of looking for directories, it'll only look for files, and we'll be sure to do that within that album subfolder. So let's run that. Oh, bummer. I forgot to add a plus sign right here, like that. All right, we're good. So now I'm actually going to say albums Italy 2012.json, and you'll see I now get the album data with the name and then the photos in it, which is the list of all the photos in that album. So that's the new sort of multi-request handling version of our URL server, and we're writing a lot of code, but we're getting a lot of the basics, and we're sort of understanding a lot of how all this stuff works. And this is kind of pretty cool.